Lena Cross had spent 8 years perfecting the art of being nobody. False name, cash-only jobs, no photographs, no connections. The woman she'd been, the one who'd watched a killer's face twist with rage as the verdict came down, had died the moment she entered witness protection. But tonight, as she locked the bar's back door and felt the weight of eyes on her neck, she knew the truth. You can't outrun a ghost forever, especially when that ghost has just escaped prison. And he's already killed everyone else who put him there. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this journey reaches. Bulky. The neon sign outside Harlow's bar had been flickering for 3 weeks, and Lena still hadn't called anyone to fix it. Not because she didn't care, the erratic buzzing set her teeth on edge every time she walked beneath it, but because calling a repairman meant paperwork, questions, a name on an invoice that might not match the one on her lease. In her world, even a broken light could become a liability. She pulled her keys from her jacket pocket, the metal cold against her fingers despite Miami's humid night air. The street was quiet, the kind of quiet that made her instincts prickle. Too quiet. The usual hum of late-night traffic from the main road felt distant, muffled, as if the city itself had drawn a breath and held it. Lena paused at the door, her hand hovering over the lock. Her eyes swept the parking lot. 2 cars, both familiar, both belonging to regulars who'd stumbled out an hour ago. The dumpster sat in its usual spot, lid closed. The alley beyond it lay in shadow, but nothing moved. You're being paranoid, she told herself, again. But paranoia had kept her alive for 8 years. She unlocked the door, slipped inside, and locked it behind her in one practiced motion. The bar smelled like beer and bleach. She'd already wiped down the counters, stacked the chairs, counted the register. All that remained was the walk through cooler inventory, a task she hated but refused to skip. Routine was survival. Routine kept you sharp. Lena moved behind the bar, her sneakers silent on the rubber mats. She'd just reached for the cooler door when her phone buzzed in her pocket. The number on the screen made her blood turn to ice. Marcus. Her handler never called. Not unless something had gone catastrophically wrong. Their communication followed strict protocols. Encrypted messages on Tuesdays and Fridays, never voice, never unscheduled. This call violated every rule they'd established. Her thumb hovered over the screen as the phone buzzed again, insistent, demanding. She answered but didn't speak. Lena. Marcus's voice came through rough, strained. In the background, she heard something that sounded like wind, or traffic, or both. Listen very carefully. Don't go home. Don't go anywhere familiar. Get cash and... The line went dead. Lena stared at the phone, her pulse hammering in her ears. She redialed. It rang once, then went to a generic voicemail. She tried again. Same result. Her hand was shaking. She forced herself to breathe, to think. Marcus had sounded wrong, not just urgent, but wrong, frightened. Marcus, who'd spent 20 years in witness protection services and treated danger like a weather report, had been frightened. The cooler could wait. Hell, the whole bar could burn down for all she cared. Lena grabbed her bag from under the counter, checked that her pepper spray was accessible, and headed for the back exit. She paused at the door, listening. Nothing. She eased it open, slipped into the alley, and a hand closed around her wrist. Lena reacted on instinct, twisting hard, her free hand reaching for the spray. But the grip didn't tighten, didn't pull. It simply held her, firm but not painful. Easy. The voice was male, low, calm. I'm not here to hurt you. She wrenched her arm free and spun to face him, pepper spray raised. The man stood just inside the reach of the security light, hands now visible at his sides, palms out. He was tall, maybe 6'1", with dark hair and darker eyes that watched her with unsettling focus. Well-dressed, too well-dressed for this neighborhood. Charcoal suit, no tie, the kind of clothes that whispered money without shouting it. Who the hell are you? Lena's voice came out steadier than she felt. My name is Adrian Fiora. He didn't move, didn't blink. And you need to come with me, now. I'm not going anywhere with... Marcus is dead. The words hit her like a physical blow. Lena's breath caught, her mind racing to reject what she'd just heard, to find the lie in it. But something in his expression, the careful neutrality, The absence of any trace of satisfaction or manipulation told her he wasn't bluffing. "You're lying." "I wish I were." Adrian's gaze didn't waver. "He was killed approximately 40 minutes ago, 2 blocks from his apartment. Single gunshot to the head, professional, clean. You were his primary asset, which means you're next on the list." Lena's hand tightened on the pepper spray. "If you know that much, you're either a cop or you're working with whoever killed him. Either way, I'm not." Viktor Kozlov escaped from federal custody 6 days ago. The name stopped her cold. Viktor Kozlov. The man whose face still appeared in her nightmares, whose voice she sometimes heard in crowds that were too loud, too close. The man she'd watched commit murder in a basement in Brooklyn 9 years ago, when she'd been Rachel Winters, a paralegal working late, taking a shortcut through the wrong neighborhood at the wrong time. She'd testified, watched him get sentenced to life without parole, disappeared into witness protection 3 days later. And now Adrian Fiora was telling her that Victor was free. "That's impossible," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Federal custody doesn't just transfer convoy, interstate highway, middle of nowhere." Adrian's tone remained matter-of-fact, clinical. 3 guards dead, 2 vehicles burned. They found the convoy commander alive but sedated. He couldn't tell them anything useful. Lena's back hit the brick wall behind her. She hadn't realized she'd been backing away. 6 days, she repeated. "If he's been out for 6 days, why am I just hearing about this now?" "Because Marcus was trying to move you before you found out. He didn't want you to panic." Adrian took a single step forward, slow, deliberate. "He was supposed to extract you tomorrow morning. New identity, new city, complete reset. But Victor's people found him first. And how do you know all this?" "Because I've been watching you for 3 weeks." The admission should have terrified her. Instead, it triggered a different response. Recognition. The feeling of being observed, the prickle of awareness she'd been dismissing as paranoia. It hadn't been paranoia at all. "Why?" Lena demanded. "Because Marcus called in a favor. With me." Adrian's expression shifted, something almost like regret flickering across his features. "We served together, a long time ago. When he realized Victor was out and that official channels had been compromised, he reached out, asked me to keep you safe if anything happened to him." "Compromised how?" "Someone inside Marshall's service leaked your location. That's how they found Marcus." Adrian's voice hardened. "And that's how they'll find you, unless you let me get you out of here. Right now." Lena's mind raced through possibilities, probabilities, risks. Every instinct screamed at her not to trust this stranger, this man who'd been watching her, who appeared out of nowhere with convenient answers and convenient timing. But Marcus was dead. Victor was free. And she was standing in an alley alone, exposed, with nowhere to run that Victor's people couldn't follow. "If I go with you," she said slowly. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere they won't think to look." Adrian lowered his hands. "Somewhere you'll be protected by more than a fake name and a marshal's service that's already failed you." "That's not an answer." "No," Adrian agreed. "It's a choice. Trust me and live. Run alone and see how long you last." Lena looked at him, really looked at him. He stood like someone accustomed to being obeyed, with the kind of stillness that came from absolute confidence or absolute control. There was something dangerous about him, something that suggested violence wasn't foreign to his world. But there was also something else. When he'd grabbed her wrist, he could have dragged her into the shadows, silenced her, made her disappear. Instead, he'd let go, stepped back, given her space to choose. Victor's men wouldn't have done that. "I need to get something from inside," she said. "You have 30 seconds. Lena pushed past him, back into the bar. She moved quickly, grabbing the emergency cash she kept taped under the register, $800 in 20s, and the spare phone from her locker. Her real phone, the one Marcus had called, she left on the counter. If it was compromised, it could be tracked. 28 seconds. She rejoined Adrian in the alley. He gestured toward the street where a black sedan sat idling at the curb, windows tinted, license plate obscured by shadow. "That's not suspicious at all," Lena muttered. "Neither is a woman who's worked at the same dive bar for 3 years without a single social media presence or traceable background check." Adrian opened the rear door. "Get in." Lena hesitated one final moment, weighing the unknown threat against the known one. Then she slid into the car. The interior smelled like leather and something else, something faint, and expensive. The driver didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge her. Adrian climbed in beside her, and the car pulled smoothly into traffic. They drove in silence for 10 minutes, winding through streets Lena recognized, and then streets she didn't. She watched the city blur past, calculating distances, memorizing turns. Old habits died hard. "Where are we going?" she asked again. "My home." "And where's that?" "Coral Gables." Lena's eyebrows rose. Coral Gables meant money, serious money. The kind of neighborhood where security cameras covered every corner and private guards patrolled in discreet vehicles. "You live in Coral Gables, but you spend your nights watching bartenders in Little Havana?" "I spend my nights protecting people who need it." Adrian's gaze remained fixed on the window. "Marcus saved my life once. This is me returning the favor. By babysitting his asset. By keeping you alive." The car turned onto a tree-lined street where the houses sat behind gates and walls, their windows glowing with warm light. They pulled into a circular driveway, and Lena found herself staring at a 3-story Spanish colonial that probably cost more than she'd earn in 10 lifetimes. The driver parked and exited without a word. Adrian opened his door, then paused. "Before we go inside, you need to understand something." His tone had shifted, become more formal. "My world isn't the one you've been hiding in. The people I associate with, the business I conduct, it's not always clean, not always legal, but it's structured, controlled, and most importantly, it's protected." Lena's stomach tightened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that if you walk through that door, you're entering a different kind of life, one where the rules you've been living by don't apply anymore." Adrian met her eyes. "But it's also a life where Victor Kozlov can't touch you. Because in my world, I'm the one people are afraid of." The word should have sent her running. Instead, they settled over her like cold truth. She'd spent 8 years hiding, surviving, existing in the cracks of society where no one looked too closely. And it hadn't been enough. Victor had still found her. Marcus was still dead. Maybe it was time to stop hiding behind someone else's protection and step into a different kind of shield. "All right," Lena said quietly. "Let's go inside." The house was beautiful in a way that felt almost aggressive. Marble floors, high ceilings with exposed beams, art that Lena suspected was original despite having no idea who the artists were. A woman in her 50s appeared as they entered, her expression professionally neutral. "Elena, this is Lena. She'll be staying with us." Adrian handed the woman his jacket. "Please prepare the East Guest Suite and have dinner sent up. She hasn't eaten." Elena nodded and disappeared down a hallway. Lena followed Adrian through the house, her sneakers squeaking on the polished floors. They climbed a curved staircase to the second floor where he led her to a room that was larger than her entire apartment. A king-sized bed dominated the space, flanked by windows that overlooked a garden lit with soft landscape lighting. "Bathroom's through there," Adrian pointed to a door on the left. "Closet has basics if you need them. Dinner will be up in 20 minutes. And then what?" Lena turned to face him. "You keep me locked in a gilded cage until Victor gets bored?" "No. Tomorrow we start planning how to end this." Adrian's expression hardened. "Victor Kozlov has been hunting witnesses for 6 days. Marcus was number 4. There are 3 others still alive, including you. He's not going to stop until you're all dead, or he is." "So what's your plan? Wait for him to come to us?" "No, we go to him." Lena stared at him. "That's suicide." "No, that's strategy." Adrian moved to the window, his reflection ghost-like in the glass. "Victor's people have been tracking you through conventional means, surveillance, informants, compromised officials. But they won't be watching for someone like me, someone with resources that exist outside official channels." "Someone with criminal connections, you mean?" Adrian didn't deny it. "I have access to information and people that law enforcement doesn't. And I have something Victor doesn't expect." "What's that?" He turned to look at her. "You. Willing to fight back instead of run." Lena wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. The adrenaline that had carried her through the last hour was beginning to fade, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness. "I don't even know who you really are," she said. "For all I know, this is an elaborate trap. If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead." Adrian's bluntness should have frightened her, but instead it felt strangely reassuring. Marcus trusted me. That has to count for something. Marcus is dead. Yes, and I'm trying to make sure you're not next. He moved toward the door. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll talk about next steps. For tonight, you're safe. He left before she could respond, the door clicking shut behind him. Lena stood alone in the beautiful room, listening to the silence of a house too large for one person. Her hands were shaking again. She pressed them flat against her thighs, forcing them to still. Marcus was dead. Victor was hunting her, and she'd just placed her life in the hands of a stranger who admitted to running in criminal circles. But as she looked around the room, at the locked windows, the solid door, the cameras she'd spotted in the hallway, she realized something. For the first time in 8 years, she felt like she might actually survive the night. Lena didn't sleep. She tried. She lay in the impossibly comfortable bed, staring at the ceiling, watching shadows shift as tree branches moved outside the window. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus, not as he must have been when he died, but as he'd been the last time they'd met in person, 3 years ago. They'd sat in a park in Homestead, pretending to be strangers sharing a bench, and he told her she was doing well, that she'd gotten good at being invisible. The best witnesses are the ones who forget they used to be someone else, he'd said. You're almost there, Lena. Just keep going. Now he was gone, and she was back to square one. Worse than square one. Because Victor knew she was in Miami, knew she was alive, and wouldn't stop until he'd corrected that particular problem. At 5:30, she gave up on sleep and showered, using the expensive products lined up in the bathroom with the kind of careful precision she'd apply to defusing a bomb. Everything in this house felt breakable, including her. She dressed in the same clothes from yesterday, jeans, dark t-shirt, jacket, and ventured downstairs. The house was silent, but not empty. She could feel the presence of other people, could hear the distant murmur of voices from somewhere toward the back of the property. The kitchen, when she found it, was a massive space of stainless steel and granite, with windows overlooking a pool that glowed turquoise in the pre-dawn light. Elena was there, already dressed despite the early hour, preparing coffee. Good morning, Miss Cross. The woman's tone was pleasant but professional. Coffee? Please. Lena slid onto a bar stool. And just Lena is fine. Elena poured 2 cups, sliding one across the counter. Mr. Fiora is in his office. He asked that you join him when you woke. Where's his office? I'll show you. They walked through the house in silence, Elena's heels clicking on the marble. She stopped at a heavy wooden door near the back of the first floor and knocked twice. Come in. Elena opened the door and gestured for Lena to enter. Adrian's office was exactly what she'd expected. Dark wood furniture, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, windows that looked out onto the garden. But it was the wall behind his desk that caught her attention. A massive digital display showing what looked like surveillance feeds from various locations. Adrian stood at the window, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid Spanish. When he saw Lena, he wrapped up the call and set the phone down. You're up early. Couldn't sleep. Lena moved closer to the screens, studying them. What is all this? Security feeds from properties I own or protect. Adrian gestured to the display. Restaurants, warehouses, residential buildings. Approximately 40 locations across Miami-Dade County. You own 40 buildings? I own or have interest in 40 buildings. There's a difference. He touched a button on his desk, and the screens changed, showing different angles of the same locations. In my line of work, knowing what's happening where is the difference between profit and prison. Lena turned to face him. And what exactly is your line of work? Adrian studied her for a long moment, as if weighing how much truth she could handle. Then he moved to a cabinet, opened it, and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. I run a family business. He handed her a glass. Import-export primarily. We deal in goods that move through legitimate channels but don't always originate from legitimate sources. We also provide services, protection, information, conflict resolution. You're a criminal. I'm a businessman who operates in gray areas. Adrian sipped his drink. The Fiora family has been in Miami for 3 generations. We provide for our people, protect our interests, and maintain order in places where official law enforcement either can't or won't. Lena set her glass down untouched. So, when Marcus asked for your help, what did he offer in exchange? Nothing. I owed him a debt. Adrian's expression grew distant. 15 years ago, I made a mistake that should have gotten me killed. Marcus covered for me, risked his career to keep me alive. I told him if he ever needed anything, he only had to ask. And he asked you to protect me. No, he asked me to protect you properly. Adrian moved back to his desk. He said witness protection was a band-aid on a gunshot wound. It might keep you alive temporarily, but it wouldn't save you if someone was determined enough to find you. He wanted something permanent. There's no such thing as permanent safety. You're right, but there's permanent deterrence. Adrian pulled a folder from his desk drawer and slid it across to her. Viktor Kozlov has killed 4 witnesses in 6 days, but there are patterns to his methods, predictability in his choices. He's working from a list, and he's moving geographically. Lena opened the folder. Inside were photographs, documents, maps, all marked with dates and locations. Her stomach clenched as she recognized faces. Sarah Chen, an accountant from Queens, David Morrison, a construction worker from Boston, James Martinez, a taxi driver from Newark, and Marcus, all dead. Who's left? She asked. You. Thomas Brennan in Philadelphia, and Catherine Wells in Chicago. Adrian pointed to 2 photographs clipped to the inside of the folder. Brennan testified about Victor's money laundering operation. Wells was a jury member who refused to be intimidated. Why are you showing me this? Because tomorrow morning, I'm proposing a solution to this problem, and I need you to understand exactly what's at stake before I do. Lena looked up at him. What kind of solution? Adrian held her gaze. Marriage. The word hung in the air between them like a challenge. Excuse me? Victor is hunting you because you're vulnerable, isolated, an easy target. Adrian's tone remained calm, clinical. But if you marry me, you stop being Lena Cross, former witness living in hiding. You become Lena Fiora, wife of a man with significant resources and equally significant connections. You gain the protection of my family, my network, my name. That's insane. That's strategy. Adrian moved around the desk, closer to her. In my world, family means power. It means people think twice before touching you because they know there will be consequences. Victor's good at killing isolated targets, but he's not equipped to handle the kind of response attacking my wife would generate. Lena's head was spinning. You're talking about a fake marriage, a business arrangement. I'm talking about a legally binding marriage that provides you with real protection. Adrian's voice softened slightly. Yes, it's a transaction, but it's also the best option you have right now, unless you want to spend the rest of your life running, hoping Victor doesn't find you again. She wanted to argue, to find a flaw in his logic, but the brutal truth was that he was right. She'd been running for 8 years, and Victor had still found her. Official protection had failed. Hiding had failed. What do you get out of this? She asked. I honor my debt to Marcus, and I gained something my family has been pressuring me about for years, a wife. Adrian's expression turned wry. My mother will be thrilled. Despite everything, Lena almost laughed. This is completely insane. Yes, Adrian agreed, but it's also the only option that keeps you alive long enough to see Viktor Kozlov back behind bars. Or dead, whichever comes first. Lena walked to the window, staring out at the garden without really seeing it. 8 years ago, she'd been Rachel Winters, a paralegal with a tiny apartment and student loans, whose biggest problem was deciding which streaming service to cancel. Then she'd witnessed a murder, and that woman had died, replaced by Lena Cross, a ghost with no history, no connections, no life. Now Adrian Fiora was offering her a third identity, a third life. This one armored in wealth and power and a last name that apparently meant something in circles she'd spent her whole existence trying to avoid. I need time to think. You have until tomorrow morning. Adrian returned to his desk. After that, we need to move. Every day we wait is another day Victor gets closer. Lena nodded and left the office, her mind churning. She spent the rest of the day alone, wandering the house like a ghost herself. Elena brought her meals she barely touched. She tried to read, to watch television, to do anything that would quiet the chaos in her head, but every time she tried to focus on something else, she came back to the same terrible conclusion. Adrian was right. Marriage to him was her best chance at survival. Maybe her only chance. The question was whether she was willing to trade one kind of cage for another. Whoosh. At 7 that evening, Adrian found her on the terrace overlooking the garden. She heard him approach but didn't turn around. "There's something else you should know," he said, standing beside her at the railing. "If you agree to this, it can't be half-hearted. My family, my associates, they need to believe it's real. Which means you'll need to learn about my world, understand how it works, be able to navigate it without me beside you. You're asking me to become someone else, again. No, I'm asking you to become yourself, but with armor." Adrian's voice was quiet. "You've spent 8 years disappearing. This would be the opposite. This would be stepping into the light, protected by something stronger than a fake ID." Lena finally looked at him. In the fading sunset, his features were softer, less intimidating. He looked tired, she realized. And despite the expensive clothes and the mansion and the criminal empire, he looked lonely. "Why did you really agree to help Marcus?" she asked. Adrian was silent for a long moment. Then, "Because I know what it's like to be hunted, to look over your shoulder every day, wondering if today's the day it all ends." His jaw tightened. "Marcus saved me from that. I'm trying to do the same for you. By marrying me. By giving you a choice between survival and surrender." Adrian turned to face her fully. "I won't force you. If you want to leave tomorrow, I'll arrange safe transport to wherever you want to go. But I can't guarantee Victor won't find you eventually. This is the only guarantee I can offer." Lena thought about Marcus, about the phone call that had ended mid-sentence, about the 3 other witnesses who died because they'd relied on official protection that had failed them. She thought about 8 years of living as no one, belonging nowhere, connecting with nothing, and she thought about Adrian's words. "Become yourself, but with armor." "If I do this," she said slowly, "I need something in return. Name it. When this is over, when Victor's either caught or dead and I'm actually safe, I want out, clean, no obligations, no strings. You get whatever you need from your family in the meantime, but when the threat is gone, I'm free to leave if I choose." Adrian extended his hand. "Deal." Lena looked at his hand for a long moment, then she took it. His grip was firm, warm, steady. The grip of someone who kept their promises. "We'll make the arrangements tomorrow," Adrian said. "Small ceremony, just family and a few key associates. We'll file the paperwork immediately. Within 48 hours, you'll be legally protected under the Fiora name. And then? Then we draw Victor out. Together." Adrian's expression hardened. "He came for you because you were alone. Let's show him what happens when you're not." As night fell over Coral Gables, Lena stood beside the man she'd agreed to marry, staring out at a garden that would soon belong to her, and a house that would soon be her home. She'd spent 8 years hiding from her past. Now for the first time she was going to face it head on. And she wasn't going to face it alone. The morning arrived with the kind of brightness that felt almost offensive. Lena stood in front of the mirror in the East guest suite, staring at a woman she barely recognized. Elena had brought clothes at dawn, a cream-colored dress that fit perfectly, despite no one having asked her size, elegant but understated, the kind of thing a woman might wear to a small, intimate ceremony. A wedding. Her wedding. The absurdity of it should have made her laugh. Instead, she felt numb, like she was watching herself from a great distance, observing a stranger going through motions that would change everything. "Miss Cross?" Elena's voice came from the doorway. "Mr. Fiora is waiting downstairs." Lena took one last look at her reflection. The dress was beautiful. She looked almost normal, almost like someone who belonged in this world of marble floors and surveillance feeds and marriages arranged for survival. Almost. She descended the stairs to find Adrian in the foyer, dressed in a dark suit that probably cost more than 3 months of her bartending salary. He looked up as she approached, and something flickered in his expression. Approval, maybe, or satisfaction that his plan was moving forward. "You look beautiful," he said, and it sounded like a statement of fact rather than a compliment. "This is really happening." Lena's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Only if you still want it to." Adrian held out his hand. "Last chance to change your mind." Lena thought about Victor Kozlov, about Marcus lying dead on a street corner, about 8 years of living half a life. She placed her hand in Adrian's. "Let's do this." The ceremony took place in Adrian's study, witnessed by Elena, Adrian's lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Catalina Reyes, and a man Adrian introduced simply as Dante, who had the build of someone who solved problems with his fists when words failed. The officiant was a nervous-looking judge who kept glancing at Adrian like he wasn't sure whether to be honored or terrified by the request. The vows were standard, mechanical. Lena repeated words that felt like lines from a script, playing a role in a performance where the audience was small, but the stakes were life and death. When the judge pronounced them married, Adrian kissed her cheek, brief, formal, nothing that suggested any emotion beyond professional courtesy. They signed papers. Catalina witnessed with efficient strokes of her pen, and just like that, Lena Cross became Lena Fiora. "Congratulations," Catalina said, gathering the documents into a leather folder. "I'll file these within the hour. By this afternoon, the marriage will be registered with the state." "Thank you, Catalina." Adrian's tone was dismissive, but not unkind. The lawyer took the hint and excused herself, followed by the judge and Dante. Elena appeared with champagne, poured 2 glasses, and disappeared again with the kind of discretion that suggested she'd seen stranger things in this house. Adrian handed Lena a glass. "To survival." "To survival," Lena echoed, and drank. The champagne was excellent. Everything in this house was excellent. It made her skin crawl. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we make sure the right people know you're my wife." Adrian set his glass down and pulled out his phone. "I'm arranging a small gathering for tonight. Family, close associates, people who need to see us together to make this believable." "How many people?" 30, maybe 40. He scrolled through his contacts. "My mother will want to meet you before anyone else. She's traditional. This will matter to her." Lena's stomach tightened. "When?" "This afternoon. I've already called her." Adrian looked up from his phone. "I told her I'd married someone I've been seeing quietly. She's eager to meet you." "You want me to lie to your mother?" "I want you to survive," which means convincing her that this is real. Adrian's expression hardened slightly. "My mother is perceptive. If she suspects this is a business arrangement, she'll ask questions that could expose you. So I'm supposed to pretend I'm in love with you. You're supposed to pretend you trust me. The rest will follow." He moved closer, his voice lowering. "Love isn't required for this to work, but respect is. Can you manage that?" Lena met his gaze. Despite everything, the criminal empire, the forced marriage, the surveillance feeds in his office, there was something fundamentally steady about Adrian Fiora. He'd kept his word so far. He'd protected her when he could have simply walked away. "I can manage respect," she said quietly. "Good." Adrian checked his watch. "We'll leave for my mother's house at 2. Until then, Elena will help you prepare. There are things you need to know about my family before you meet them." Elena turned out to be more than a housekeeper. Over the next 3 hours, she transformed into something like a coach, walking Lena through the complex web of Fiora family dynamics with the precision of someone giving a military briefing. "Mrs. Fiora, Angelina, is the matriarch," Elena explained as she styled Lena's hair into something elegant and sophisticated. Her husband, Antonio, died 12 years ago. Adrian was 23 when he took over the family business. Angelina still advises him, though she's officially retired. "How much does she know about what Adrian does?" Elena's hands paused briefly, then continued their work. "She knows everything. She ran things herself for 5 years after Antonio died until Adrian was ready. She's not someone you lie to successfully." Lena's anxiety ratcheted up another notch. "Great." "She'll like you," Elena said with surprising confidence. "You're not what she expected. That will intrigue her." What did she expect? Someone from the families. Someone with connections, bloodlines, an understanding of how things work. Elena met Lena's eyes in the mirror. "You're an outsider. That makes you either a liability or an asset. You'll need to prove you're the latter." "And how do I do that?" "By being honest about what you don't know, and smart about what you learn." Elena stepped back, surveying her work. "And by remembering that family loyalty is everything. Once you're a Fiora, you protect the family. Always." Lena looked at herself in the mirror. Elena had worked magic. Her hair fell in soft waves. Her makeup was subtle but flawless. And she looked like someone who belonged in Adrian's world. But beneath the surface, she was still a woman who'd spent 8 years serving drinks and counting exits. Could she really pull this off? She didn't have a choice. Adrian's mother lived in a sprawling estate in Pinecrest, behind gates that opened only after a security guard verified their identities. The house was older than Adrian's, built in a time when Miami's wealthy preferred old-world elegance to modern minimalism. Gardens surrounded the property, meticulously maintained, bursting with tropical flowers that perfumed the air. Adrian parked in the circular driveway and turned to Lena. "Remember what Elena told you. Be respectful. Don't lie unless absolutely necessary. And don't be afraid of her. She respects strength." "That's not terrifying at all," Lena muttered. Adrian's mouth quirked in something that might have been a smile. "You testified against a killer in open court. You can handle my mother." They were met at the door by a man in his 60s who introduced himself as Paolo, Angelina's personal assistant. He led them through a house that felt like stepping into another era. Dark wood paneling, oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors, furniture that looked both priceless and uncomfortable. Angelina Fiora was waiting in a sunroom that overlooked the gardens. She stood as they entered, and Lena's first thought was that this woman had probably been devastating in her youth. Even now, in her early 70s, she possessed a kind of fierce elegance that commanded attention. Silver hair swept back from a face that showed every year but wore them like armor, dark eyes that missed nothing. "Adrian." Her voice was warm but assessing. "You've brought your wife." "Mother, this is Lena." Adrian's hand settled on Lena's lower back, a gesture of ownership that was probably calculated but felt oddly reassuring. "Lena, my mother. Angelina." Lena extended her hand. "It's an honor to meet you, Mrs. Fiora." Angelina's handshake was firm, brief. She studied Lena with the kind of thoroughness usually reserved for potential investments or threats. "So, you're the woman who convinced my son to finally marry." "I'm not sure I convinced him of anything," Lena said carefully, "but I'm grateful he chose me." "Chosen." Angelina's lips curved slightly. "Interesting word." She gestured to the chairs arranged around a low table. "Sit. We'll have tea and you'll tell me about yourself." The next hour was one of the most grueling of Lena's life. Angelina asked questions with surgical precision about Lena's background, her work, her family. Lena stuck to the cover story Adrian had provided. She'd grown up in Colorado, lost her parents young, worked various jobs before landing in Miami. Most of it was close enough to Rachel Winter's actual history to sound natural, with enough vague details to avoid scrutiny. "And how did you meet my son?" Angelina asked, pouring tea with the grace of someone who'd done it 10,000 times. Lena glanced at Adrian, who gave the slightest nod. "He came into the bar where I worked," she said. "We started talking. He came back the next night, and the night after that." She allowed herself a small smile. "He was persistent." Adrian is many things. Persistent is certainly one of them. Angelina studied her son. "You've been secretive about this relationship." "I wanted to be sure," Adrian said smoothly, "and I wanted to protect Lena from the complications of our world until I knew this was permanent." "Permanent." Angelina set down her teacup. "You understand what that means in this family?" "I'm beginning to," Lena said quietly. Angelina's gaze sharpened. "This is not a world that tolerates weakness or betrayal. If you're truly my son's wife, you'll need to be strong, smart, loyal." "I understand." "Do you?" Angelina leaned forward slightly. "Because the women in this family don't hide behind their husbands. They stand beside them. They protect what's theirs. They make hard choices when soft ones would be easier." Her voice dropped. "Can you do that, Lena?" For the first time since entering the house, Lena felt something other than fear. She thought about 8 years of making hard choices, of surviving when survival meant erasing herself, of testifying against Viktor Kozlov when staying silent would have been safer. "Yes," she said, meeting Angelina's eyes. "I can." Angelina held her gaze for a long moment. Then she sat back, and her expression softened fractionally. "Good. Then welcome to the family." She looked at Adrian. "You chose better than I expected." Adrian's hand found Lena's under the table, squeezed once. Relief or reassurance, she wasn't sure which. They stayed another hour, the conversation shifting to lighter topics: the house in Coral Gables, Adrian's businesses, plans for the evening's gathering. Angelina was charming when she wanted to be, telling stories about Adrian's childhood that made him visibly uncomfortable and Lena genuinely smile. But beneath the warmth, Lena could feel the assessment continuing. Angelina was deciding whether her new daughter-in-law was an asset or a liability. The verdict wasn't in yet. As they prepared to leave, Angelina walked them to the door. She placed a hand on Lena's arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "A word of advice," she said quietly. "In this world, people will test you. They'll push to see if you break. Don't." "I won't," Lena promised. "And one more thing." Angelina's voice dropped lower. "Whatever brought you into Adrian's life, whatever you're running from or running toward, make sure you're truly committed to this path. Because once you're a Fiora, there's no going back. We protect our own, but we also hold them accountable. Understand?" Lena's throat tightened. Did Angelina suspect something, or was this simply a warning any mother might give to a stranger marrying her son? "I understand," she said. Angelina nodded, satisfied, and released her arm. "Then I'll see you tonight. Wear something beautiful. We're celebrating." The gathering that evening was held at Adrian's house, transformed by a team that had appeared while they were gone. The terrace had been set with tables draped in white linen, strings of lights hung overhead, and servers moved through the space with practiced efficiency. It looked like a wedding reception, Lena realized with a jolt. Which, technically, it was. Elena had laid out another dress, this one, midnight blue, elegant and understated, with a neckline that suggested confidence without demanding attention. Lena dressed mechanically, her mind still processing the afternoon with Angelina. Adrian knocked on her door at 7. "Ready?" "As I'll ever be." He studied her for a moment. "You did well with my mother. She's not easily impressed. I think she knows something's off. She knows I'm protecting you." "That's not the same as knowing from what?" Adrian offered his arm. "Come on, time to meet the rest of them." The terrace was already crowded when they arrived. Men in expensive suits, women in dresses that probably cost more than Lena's entire wardrobe. Everyone moving through the space with the easy confidence of people accustomed to wealth and power. Conversations paused as Adrian and Lena appeared, dozens of eyes turning to assess the new bride. Adrian kept her close, his hand never leaving her waist as he introduced her to a seemingly endless stream of people. His cousins, Marco and Isabella, both sharp-eyed and curious. His uncle Vincent, who managed the family's shipping interests. Associates with names like Santoro and DeLuca and Russo, all of whom greeted Lena with varying degrees of warmth and speculation. Dante was there, the man who'd witnessed their ceremony, standing slightly apart from the crowd with a glass of whiskey. He caught Lena's eye and raised his glass in a small salute. She got the sense he was security, though whether for the event or for Adrian specifically, she couldn't tell. "Breathe," Adrian murmured in her ear. "You're doing fine. I feel like I'm on display." "You are. That's the point." He guided her toward a quieter corner of the terrace. "They need to see us together. See that this is real." "And are they convinced?" "Some are. Others are reserving judgment." Adrian's gaze swept the crowd. "Marco's suspicious. He thinks the timing is odd." Isabella's intrigued. "She likes the idea of me marrying someone from outside the families. Uncle Vincent doesn't care as long as it doesn't affect business." "How do you know all that?" "Because I've been watching them watch you." Adrian turned to face her. "They're wondering why I chose someone they've never heard of. Someone with no connections, no power. They're trying to figure out what you bring to the table." "What do I bring to the table?" Adrian's expression was unreadable. "Me. Focused. Settled. No longer a target for every family in Miami trying to arrange marriages with their daughters." His hand moved to cup her face, a gesture that looked intimate but was probably calculated for their audience. "You give me freedom from expectations. That's valuable." Lena's breath caught at the proximity, at the intensity in his eyes. "And what do you give me?" "Protection. Power. A name that means something." His thumb brushed her cheekbone. "And a chance to stop running." For a moment, standing there with his hand on her face and the weight of 40 sets of eyes on them, Lena forgot this was an arrangement, forgot that their marriage was a shield, not a union. There was something in Adrian's expression, something that looked almost like real emotion. Then the moment passed. Adrian dropped his hand and turned back to the party. Come on, we should circulate. The evening blurred into a series of conversations Lena would barely remember later. She smiled, nodded, answered questions about how she and Adrian met with the story they'd practiced. She accepted congratulations from people who were probably criminals, drank champagne she couldn't taste, and played the role of blushing bride with a skill that surprised her. It wasn't so different from witness protection, she realized. Another identity, another performance, another version of herself crafted for survival. Around 10, as the party began to wind down, Lena excused herself to use the restroom. She needed a moment alone, a moment to drop the mask and remember who she actually was beneath all these layers of fiction. She was washing her hands when the door opened behind her. A woman entered, Isabella, Adrian's cousin, elegant in a red dress that probably cost more than a car. Lena, I was hoping to catch you alone. Isabella's smile was friendly, but her eyes were calculating. I wanted to welcome you properly, without Adrian hovering. Thank you. Everyone's been very kind. Have they? Isabella leaned against the counter, studying Lena in the mirror. I think some have been kind. Others have been curious. There's a difference. Lena turned to face her. And which are you? Both? Isabella's smile widened. I like you. You're not what I expected. You're nervous but trying to hide it. You're smart enough to know you're out of your depth, but brave enough to wade in anyway. She paused. And you're scared of something. Not Adrian. Something else. Lena's heart rate spiked. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. Isabella's tone remained light, conversational. Look, I'm not trying to interrogate you. I'm trying to help. Because whatever brought you into this family, you're in it now. And that means we protect you. But it also means we need to know if there's a threat we should be aware of. There's no threat. Lena. Isabella's voice softened. Adrian married you in secret and then announced it like a done deal. That's not how he operates. He plans everything, consults everyone, moves carefully. This was fast and impulsive and completely out of character. She moved closer. So either you're the love of his life, which, no offense, seems unlikely given he met you 3 weeks ago, or there's something else going on. Something serious enough to warrant this kind of speed. Lena's mind raced. Isabella was too smart, too observant, and unlike Angelina, who seemed willing to accept the situation for now, Isabella wanted answers. If there's something going on, Lena said carefully, it's Adrian's story to tell, not mine. Isabella studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Fair enough. But whatever it is, know this. You're family now. We protect family, even when we don't understand why they need protecting. She left before Lena could respond. Lena gripped the edge of the sink, her reflection staring back at her. She looked like she belonged here, in this dress, in this house, in this life. But appearances were deceiving. They always had been. By midnight, the last guests had left. Elena supervised the cleanup crew while Adrian walked Lena upstairs, his hand at her back, still playing the attentive husband in case anyone was watching. At her door, he paused. You did well tonight, better than well. They believe it. Most of them, maybe. Lena thought about Isabella's questions, Angelina's warnings. Your cousin's suspicious. Isabella's always suspicious. It's why she's good at her job. Adrian leaned against the doorframe. But she's also loyal. If she thinks there's a threat to family, she'll help neutralize it. Even if that threat is Viktor Kozlov? Especially if it's Viktor Kozlov. Adrian's expression hardened. Tomorrow, we start planning the trap. Catalina's been making inquiries through channels Viktor won't expect. We're close to finding where he's operating from. Lena's stomach twisted. And when you find him? Then we end this, permanently. Adrian pushed off from the doorframe. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be intense. He left her alone in the hallway, and Lena entered her room, closing the door behind her. The beautiful space felt like a cage, gilded but confining. She changed out of the dress, washed off the makeup, and stared at herself in the mirror. Lena Fiora, wife of a man she'd known for less than a week, protected by a criminal family, preparing to hunt the monster who'd haunted her for 8 years. She climbed into bed, exhausted but unable to sleep, and thought about what Isabella had said. You're family now. For someone who'd spent 8 years belonging to nothing and no one, the word felt foreign, dangerous, tempting. Family meant protection, but it also meant commitment, loyalty, stakes that went beyond simple survival. Lena had agreed to this marriage as a business transaction, a shield against Victor's hunt. But lying in the dark in Adrian Fiora's house, wearing his ring, carrying his name, she realized something terrifying. The lines between performance and reality were already beginning to blur, and she wasn't sure whether that made her safer or put her in even greater danger. The morning sun streamed through the windows with the same relentless brightness, but Lena woke to a different reality. She was no longer just hiding, she was bait. Adrian was already in his office when she found him, surrounded by papers and photographs spread across his desk like pieces of a puzzle. Catalina sat in one of the leather chairs, laptop open, her fingers flying across the keys. Dante stood near the window, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "Good morning," Adrian said without looking up. "Coffee's on the sideboard." Lena poured herself a cup, her hands steadier than they'd been yesterday. She'd spent the night thinking about Isabella's words, about what it meant to be family, about the choice she'd made when she took Adrian's hand and said yes. There was no going back now, only forward. "What have you found?" she asked, moving to stand beside Adrian's desk. Catalina looked up from her laptop. "Victor's using a shell company to move money. 3 properties in South Florida registered under different names, but they all trace back to the same offshore account. We've narrowed it down to 2 likely locations where he's operating from." She turned the laptop so Lena could see. 2 addresses, one in Kendall, one in Homestead. Both residential neighborhoods, both chosen for their anonymity. "How did you find this?" Lena asked. "People talk," Catalina said simply, "especially when they're scared. Victor's making moves, contacting old associates, buying supplies. He's not as invisible as he thinks he is. He's also getting impatient," Dante added from the window. 2 more witnesses left. He knows time's running out before law enforcement reorganizes and locks down everyone properly. Lena's throat tightened. "The other 2, Brennan and Wells. Are they safe?" "For now," Adrian said. "Federal marshals moved them yesterday to secure locations. But that won't stop Victor forever. He's proven he can penetrate official protection." "So what's the plan?" Adrian finally looked up at her, his dark eyes intense. "We make you visible. Very visible. You attend events with me, let yourself be photographed, establish a public presence as my wife. Victor's watching, we know he is. When he sees you're not hiding anymore, that you're under my protection, he'll have a decision to make. Come after me anyway, or cut his losses. He'll come after you," Dante said with certainty. "Men like Victor don't leave loose ends. It's not about revenge anymore. It's about reputation. If he lets a witness walk free, he looks weak." "Which is exactly what we're counting on," Adrian continued. "But he won't be able to get to you the way he got to the others. You won't be alone in some apartment at night. You'll be surrounded by security, by family, by people who know what to watch for." Lena set her coffee down. "You're turning me into a target to draw him out." "I'm turning you into protected bait," Adrian corrected. "There's a difference. You'll be visible, yes, but never vulnerable. Every appearance will be controlled, monitored, secured. And when he makes his move, we'll be ready." Adrian's voice hardened. "This ends one of 2 ways, Victor back in custody or Victor dead. I'm fine with either outcome." Catalina closed her laptop. "There's an art gallery opening tomorrow night. High profile, well attended, perfect venue for your first public appearance as a couple." "Too soon," Lena said automatically. "Exactly soon enough," Adrian countered. "Victor's operating on a timeline. Every day we wait is another day he might disappear or target someone else. We need to bait the hook now." Lena looked at the photographs spread across the desk. Crime scene images from the other murders, surveillance photos of Victor from before his imprisonment, tactical maps of the locations where Catalina suspected he might be hiding. This was real. This was happening, and she was at the center of it. "All right," she said quietly. "The gallery opening. What do I need to do?" "Be yourself," Adrian said. "Be my wife. Let people see that you're not afraid. Even though I am." Adrian stood, moving around the desk to stand in front of her. "Fear is acceptable. Showing it isn't. Victor needs to believe that attacking you means going through me, through all of us." He gestured to include Catalina and Dante. "That has to look like a fight he can't win." "What if he doesn't care?" What if he's willing to die just to kill me? Then he'll die, Dante said flatly. And you'll live. That's the only outcome we're planning for. The rest of the day was consumed by preparation. Elena brought more clothes, an entire wardrobe suitable for the wife of Adrian Fiora, pieces that spoke of wealth and taste without screaming for attention. Catalina briefed Lena on the people who would be at the gallery, the ones who mattered, the ones to avoid, the ones who might try to extract information under the guise of friendly conversation. Society events are intelligence operations in formal wear, Catalina explained as they sat in the library, the afternoon light filtering through tall windows. Everyone's gathering information, testing loyalties, making alliances. You need to be friendly but careful. Answer questions without revealing anything useful. I've been doing that for 8 years, Lena said. Not like this. Before you were invisible. Now you're Adrian's wife. That makes you interesting. People will dig. Catalina's gaze was direct. And some of them are very good at it. What should I say if someone asks about my background? The truth, mostly. You grew up in Colorado, lost your parents, worked your way to Miami. Keep it vague enough to discourage follow-up questions. If someone pushes, redirect to Adrian. How you met, how he swept you off your feet, how grateful you are to be part of his family. Romance over biography. Exactly. Catalina smiled slightly. Most people prefer love stories to life stories anyway. Give them the fantasy, and they'll stop looking for facts. That evening, Adrian took Lena to dinner at a restaurant downtown, not for the food, but for the visibility. They sat at a window table where anyone passing by could see them, where the paparazzi who mysteriously appeared could get clear shots of Miami's newest power couple. Adrian played the attentive husband, his hand covering hers on the table, his attention focused entirely on her as if the rest of the world had ceased to exist. You're good at this, Lena said quietly, aware that her words might be overheard by the couple at the next table. I've had practice. Adrian's thumb traced circles on her palm. My family's been in the public eye for 3 generations. You learn to perform. Is that what this is? A performance? Adrian's eyes met hers, and for a moment, something genuine flickered there. Parts of it. Not all of it. The words hung between them, weighted with implications Lena wasn't ready to examine. She pulled her hand away gently, reaching for her water glass, breaking the intensity of the moment. They finished dinner under the eyes of curious onlookers and were photographed leaving the restaurant, Adrian's arm around Lena's waist, her head tilted toward his as if they were sharing a private joke. By morning, the photos would be online, in the society pages, spreading through social media. Lena Fiora, mysterious bride, stepping into the light. And somewhere, Victor Kozlov would be watching. The gallery opening was held in Wynwood, in a converted warehouse that now showcased contemporary art for Miami's wealthy and connected. Lena wore a black dress that Elena had selected, elegant, understated, with a neckline that suggested confidence. Adrian wore a charcoal suit, no tie, the kind of effortless sophistication that came from never having to try too hard. They arrived fashionably late, which Catalina had explained was strategic. Let the crowd gather, then make an entrance. The effect was immediate. Conversations paused as they walked in, heads turning to assess the couple everyone had been talking about. Adrian kept Lena close, his hand a constant presence at her back, guiding her through the crowd. They moved from group to group, Adrian making introductions, Lena smiling and nodding and playing her part. She recognized some faces from the wedding gathering. Marco and Isabella, Uncle Vincent, several others whose names she'd already forgotten. You're doing great, Adrian murmured in her ear during a brief moment alone. Natural. I don't feel natural. I feel like I'm being hunted. You are. But not here. Not tonight. His gaze swept the room, cataloging exits, noting security positions, marking potential threats with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Dante's at the north entrance. 2 more of our people are posing as waiters. Every person who walked through that door was screened. You can't screen for everything. No, but I can make it hard enough that Victor will have to get creative. And creativity takes time. Time we'll use to find him first. They were approached by an older man with silver hair and an expensive watch, someone Adrian introduced as Senator Morales, a name Lena vaguely recognized from news coverage. The senator congratulated them on their marriage, asked pointed questions about Lena's background that she deflected with the practiced ease Catalina had taught her, and eventually moved on to other conversations. He's invested in one of our shipping operations, Adrian explained once the senator was out of earshot. Legitimate investment, legitimate business. He likes to know who's in the family because it affects his political calculus. Does he know what else your family does? He knows enough to look the other way when convenient and ask questions when it benefits him. Adrian's tone was matter of fact. That's how this world works. Everyone compromises. Everyone benefits. The lines between legal and illegal blur until they're almost invisible. Before Lena could respond, Isabella appeared at her elbow, elegant in emerald green, a glass of champagne in one hand. Lena, you look stunning. Adrian, stop monopolizing your wife. I need to steal her for a moment. Adrian looked like he wanted to refuse, but Isabella was already linking her arm through Lena's and steering her toward a quieter corner of the gallery. I wanted to apologize, Isabella said once they were away from the crowd, for ambushing you at the wedding. That was unfair. It's fine. It's not, but I appreciate the diplomacy. Isabella studied a painting on the wall, abstract splashes of color that probably cost more than a car. I spoke with Adrian last night. He told me enough. Lena's pulse quickened. Enough? Enough to understand that you're in danger, that this marriage is as much about protection as anything else. Isabella turned to face her. He didn't give me details, and I didn't ask. But I want you to know that what I said before still stands. You're family now. Whatever you need, you have it. The sincerity in her voice was unexpected. Lena had spent so long trusting no one that the offer felt foreign, almost suspicious. But there was no deception in Isabella's expression, only a fierce kind of loyalty that Lena was beginning to understand was the foundation of the Fiora family. Thank you, Lena said quietly. Don't thank me yet. Being a Fiora comes with responsibilities. Isabella's smile turned wry. You'll be expected to show up at family dinners, tolerate Angelina's opinions on everything from politics to proper pasta preparation, and navigate the complex social dynamics of a very complicated family. I can handle that. I think you can. Isabella glanced across the room to where Adrian stood talking with a group of men in suits. He's different with you, more settled, less alone. We barely know each other. Maybe. But sometimes that doesn't matter. Isabella's gaze returned to Lena. My husband and I had an arranged marriage. Met twice before the wedding. We've been together 15 years now, and I can't imagine my life without him. Sometimes the best relationships start with necessity and grow into something real. The word settled over Lena like a weight. She'd been so focused on survival, on using this marriage as a shield, that she hadn't considered what might happen if it became something more. If the performance turned into reality. If the protection became connection. Before she could respond, Dante appeared at Isabella's shoulder, his expression neutral but his presence urgent. Adrian needs you both, he said quietly. Now. They followed him through the crowd to where Adrian stood near the gallery's entrance, his posture tense, his attention fixed on his phone. When he saw them approach, he looked up, and Lena saw something in his expression that made her blood run cold. Victor made contact, Adrian said quietly. 10 minutes ago. Anonymous message to one of our channels. What did it say? Lena asked, though part of her didn't want to know. Adrian turned his phone so she could see the screen. The message was short, direct, chilling in its simplicity. Tell your wife I'm coming for her, soon, and not even your name will save her when I do. Lena's breath caught. The gallery suddenly felt too small, too exposed despite all of Adrian's security measures. Victor knew. He knew where she was, who she'd married, and he was taunting them with the knowledge. He's watching, she said, her voice barely audible. Let him watch. Adrian's jaw tightened. He just made a mistake. That message came through a channel we've been monitoring. Catalina's tracing it now. What if it's a diversion? What if he's here? He's not. Dante's voice was certain. Message was sent from a location in Homestead. We've already got people moving on it. Then we should go, Isabella said. Get Lena somewhere secure. No. Lena surprised herself with the firmness in her voice. If we leave now, it looks like we're running. That's what he wants, to see me scared, see me weak. Adrian studied her. You're sure? I'm sure. Lena straightened her shoulders, channeling 8 years of forced courage, of testifying in court while Victor's eyes burned into her from across the room. Let him watch. Let him see that I'm not running anymore. Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Respect, maybe? Or recognition of a strength he hadn't fully believed existed until this moment. He nodded slowly. All right, we stay, but we stay smart. He gestured to Dante. Double the security. I want eyes on every entrance, every vehicle in a 3-block radius. Anyone who even looks suspicious gets approached and identified. Already done, Dante said, and melted back into the crowd. They stayed at the gallery for another hour, though the evening had lost its celebratory feel. Lena smiled and made conversation and played her part, but beneath the performance, her mind was racing. Victor had made contact. He was close, watching, planning. And despite all of Adrian's security, all the protection the Fiora name provided, she knew the truth. Eventually, Victor would make his move. And when he did, all the careful planning in the world might not be enough. They returned to the house in Coral Gables after midnight, exhausted and wired with adrenaline that had nowhere to go. Catalina was waiting in Adrian's office, her laptop open, her expression grim. The message came from a burner phone, probably destroyed immediately after sending, she said without preamble. But the location ping was real, Warehouse District in Homestead, near the address we'd already flagged. We sent people, but the building was empty. He'd already moved. How long ago? Adrian asked. 2, maybe 3 hours. Left in a hurry. Food still on the table. Equipment abandoned. Catalina pulled up photos on her laptop. But he left something behind. A list. She turned the screen. On it was a handwritten document, names crossed out in red ink. Sarah Chen, David Morrison, James Martinez, Marcus. 4 names, 4 deaths. And below them, still unmarked, Lena Cross, Thomas Brennan, Catherine Wells. He's keeping score, Lena said, her voice hollow, and making sure we know he is. Adrian's hands clenched into fists. This isn't just about eliminating witnesses, it's about sending a message. Proving he can't be stopped. Can he? The question escaped before Lena could stop it. Be stopped, I mean. He's gotten to 4 people despite protection, despite precautions. What makes us think we can do better? Because we're not playing defense anymore. Adrian's gaze was hard. Tomorrow, we stop reacting and start attacking. Catalina has contacts in every shadow economy in South Florida. We'll flood the zone with inquiries, offers, pressure. Make it so Victor can't move without us knowing. Force him into a corner. And if he decides attacking me is worth dying for, then he'll die. Adrian's voice was flat, final. But you won't. The certainty in his words should have been reassuring. Instead, it terrified her, because it meant Adrian was willing to go to war for her, willing to risk everything, his family, his business, his life, to keep a woman he'd known for less than 2 weeks safe. That kind of commitment came with a price, and Lena was beginning to fear she didn't understand what that price might be. That's all. Sleep was impossible. Lena lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Victor's message playing on repeat in her mind. I'm coming for her. Soon. How soon? Tomorrow? Next week? Would she spend the rest of her life waiting for the moment when Victor finally made his move, when all the protection and planning failed and she found herself facing the man who'd haunted her nightmares for 8 years? At 3 in the morning, she gave up and went downstairs. The house was dark except for a light coming from Adrian's office. She found him at his desk, still dressed, surrounded by papers and maps and photographs. He looked up when she entered, exhaustion evident in the lines around his eyes. Can't sleep either, he asked. Every time I close my eyes, I see that list. My name, just waiting to be crossed out. Adrian pushed back from the desk. Come here. Lena crossed the room, and Adrian pulled her down to sit beside him. He showed her the map spread across his desk, South Florida, marked with pins and notes in his precise handwriting. These are Victor's known associates, he explained. People he worked with before, people who might help him now. We're putting pressure on every single one, making it clear that helping Victor means becoming an enemy of the Fiora family. Will that work? It already is. 3 of them called today offering information in exchange for protection. Victor's network is fracturing. He's running out of places to hide. So we wait for him to make a mistake? No, we force him to make a mistake. Adrian turned to look at her. Tomorrow afternoon, you and I are attending a charity luncheon at the Biltmore. Very public, very visible. We'll leak your location in advance through channels we know Victor monitors. You want to use me as bait again? I want to give Victor a target he can't resist and a trap he won't see coming. Adrian's voice was steady. The Biltmore has excellent security, multiple exits, high visibility, civilian presence that will discourage direct violence. If Victor makes a move there, we'll see it coming. And if something goes wrong? If people get hurt? They won't. We'll have every angle covered. Adrian's hand found hers in the darkness. I know this is terrifying, but we're close, Lena. Victor's desperate, making mistakes. One more push and this ends. Lena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that the plan would work, that Victor would be caught or killed, and she could finally stop looking over her shoulder. But 8 years of survival had taught her that plans failed, protection crumbled, and the monsters always found a way through. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly. Really doing this? It can't just be because you owed Marcus a debt. Adrian was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low, almost reluctant. Marcus saved my life when I was 22. I was young, stupid, thought I was invincible. Made a deal with the wrong people, got in over my head. They were going to kill me to send a message to my family. Marcus intervened, called in favors, made the threat disappear. He didn't have to do that. I was nobody to him, just another criminal's son heading for a bad end. But he did it anyway. He said everyone deserves a second chance, that the sins of the family don't have to become the sins of the son. Adrian's grip tightened on her hand. He gave me that chance. Let me become something better than what I was headed toward. So when he called asking me to protect you, it wasn't just a debt. It was a chance to pass that gift forward. The honesty in his words struck something deep in Lena. She'd been so focused on viewing this marriage as a transaction, a tool for survival, that she hadn't fully considered what it meant to Adrian. That he wasn't just fulfilling an obligation, he was honoring a man who'd believed in him when no one else did. Marcus talked about you sometimes, she said softly. Never by name, but I knew there was someone he'd helped, someone he was proud of. He said you'd taken something ugly and made it clean, made it matter. I'm trying, not always succeeding, but trying. Adrian looked at their joined hands. This life, the business, the family, the compromises, it's complicated. But protecting you isn't. That's simple. That's something good in a world that's mostly gray. They sat in silence, the weight of the conversation settling around them. Outside, Miami slept, oblivious to the hunt happening in its shadows. And inside Adrian Fiore's office, two people who'd been thrown together by necessity were beginning to realize that survival might not be the only thing at stake. The luncheon tomorrow, Lena said finally. Tell me the plan. All of it. Adrian did. And as dawn began to break over Coral Gables, Lena listened and prepared herself for the moment when she would finally face the man who'd stolen 8 years of her life. This time, she wouldn't be running. This time, she'd be ready. The Biltmore Hotel stood like a monument to old Miami elegance, its Mediterranean revival architecture gleaming in the afternoon sun. Lena stared up at it from the passenger seat of Adrian's car, her hands clenched in her lap, her breath coming shallow and quick. You can still change your mind, Adrian said quietly. We can turn around right now. No. Lena forced her hands to relax. If Victor's watching, if he's planning something, we need to know. We need to end this. Adrian's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Dante's already inside with 4 others. They've been here since this morning, checking every entrance, every service corridor, every place someone could hide or watch from. Catalina's in a van 2 blocks away monitoring security feeds. If Victor or anyone connected to him gets within 100 yards of you, we'll know. What if he doesn't come himself? What if he sends someone? Then we catch whoever he sends and use them to find him. Adrian pulled into the circular drive where valets waited. Either way, this moves us closer to ending it. They exited the car into a world of cameras and curious eyes. The charity luncheon was a who's who of Miami society. Politicians, business leaders, old money families who'd been shaping the city for generations. Exactly the kind of high-profile event where violence would be foolish, where security would be tight, where attacking someone would require either spectacular stupidity or absolute desperation. Lena was betting on desperation. Inside, the ballroom was decorated in shades of cream and gold, tables arranged around a small stage where speakers would make their pitches for various causes. Adrian guided Lena through the crowd with his hand at her back, that constant touch that had become familiar over the past few days. She wondered if he was even aware he was doing it anymore, or if protecting her had become automatic. They were seated at a table near the front with several other couples Lena vaguely recognized from the gallery opening. Conversation flowed around her, talk of investments and vacation homes and children at prestigious universities, but Lena barely heard it. Her attention was divided between scanning the crowd and listening to the nearly imperceptible communications device hidden in her ear, Catalina's voice providing occasional updates. North entrance clear, west corridor clear. No suspicious activity on exterior cameras. Adrian engaged in conversation with the man beside him, something about commercial real estate, while his eyes never stopped moving, cataloging faces, tracking movement, watching for anything out of place. Lena realized he was doing exactly what she was, splitting his attention, performing normalcy while preparing for violence. The speeches began. A city councilwoman talked about youth programs. A nonprofit director explained funding needs for after-school activities. Lena applauded at the appropriate moments, smiled when someone looked her way, and tried to ignore the mounting tension in her chest. Then Catalina's voice came through sharp and urgent. Possible contact. White male, late 40s, entering through the South Service entrance. Wearing catering uniform but doesn't match staff roster. Moving toward the ballroom. Adrian's hand found Lena's under the table, squeezed once. A warning. She nodded imperceptibly. Dante's intercepting, Catalina continued. Stand by. The seconds stretched. On stage, someone was talking about the importance of community investment. Applause rippled through the room. Lena's pulse hammered in her ears. False alarm, Catalina's voice finally came. Legitimate caterer, just arrived late, he's clear. Lena exhaled slowly. Beside her, Adrian's shoulders relaxed fractionally, though his vigilance never wavered. The luncheon continued. Courses were served, wine was poured, and Miami's elite performed the careful dance of wealth and influence. Lena pushed food around her plate, unable to eat, her stomach tight with anticipation. She was beginning to think nothing would happen when Catalina's voice came through again, this time with an edge that made Lena's blood run cold. We have a problem. Black sedan just pulled up outside, engine running. Driver matches description of one of Victor's known associates. Passenger's face isn't visible, but body language suggests he's preparing to exit. Get Lena out, Adrian said quietly, already rising from his seat. Now! But before Lena could move, before Adrian could do more than take a step toward her, the ballroom doors opened and a man walked in. Not Victor, younger, leaner, with the hard eyes of someone accustomed to violence. He was dressed like he belonged there, suit and tie. But something about the way he moved, the way his gaze swept the room and locked onto Lena with predatory focus, screamed danger. That's him, Catalina's voice confirmed. Roman Volkov, Victor's nephew, known enforcer, extremely dangerous. The room seemed to slow. Roman was moving toward their table with purposeful strides, his hand reaching inside his jacket. Dante appeared from the crowd, intercepting him with casual efficiency, blocking his path. Words were exchanged, too quiet for Lena to hear over the ambient noise of the luncheon, but the tension in both men's postures was unmistakable. Adrian pulled Lena to her feet. We're leaving. Stay close to me. They moved toward the side exit, Adrian's body positioned between her and Roman. Other tables were beginning to notice the confrontation, conversations faltering, heads turning. The careful veneer of civility was cracking. Roman shoved Dante aside with surprising force and called out, his voice cutting through the ballroom like a knife. Lena Cross, your husband can't protect you forever. The room went silent. Every eye turned to stare. Lena froze, her heart slamming against her ribs. Adrian's hand tightened on her arm. Keep moving. But Roman was faster than he looked. He broke past Dante and lunged toward them, and suddenly the polite charity luncheon erupted into chaos. Women screamed, men shouted, security converged from all directions. Roman never reached them. Dante tackled him from behind, driving him to the floor with brutal efficiency. Two more of Adrian's men appeared, helping to restrain him while hotel security swarmed in, shouting orders, trying to regain control. Adrian wrapped his arm around Lena and pushed her toward the exit, moving fast but not running, maintaining the appearance of control even as panic rippled through the room. They burst through the doors into a service hallway, Dante close behind them, his expression grim. "The car's waiting at the south entrance," he said. "Move." They ran then, Lena's heels clicking against marble floors, her breath coming in gasps. Behind them, she could hear shouting, the chaos of the ballroom spilling into the corridors. Adrian's grip on her arm was iron, propelling her forward. They exploded through the south doors into blinding sunlight. Adrian's car was there, engine running, exactly as Dante had promised. They threw themselves inside, and the driver, one of Adrian's men, peeled away from the curb before the doors were fully closed. Lena twisted in her seat to look back through the rear window. Hotel security had Roman on the ground outside the entrance, at least 4 people restraining him. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Did he have a weapon?" she gasped. "Yes," Dante said from the front seat. "Handgun, silencer attached. He was planning to shoot you in that ballroom in front of 200 witnesses." The reality of it hit her like a physical blow. Victor was so desperate to kill her that he'd sent his nephew on what was essentially a suicide mission. Roman must have known he wouldn't escape, that attacking her in such a public place with so much security would end with his arrest or death, and he'd come anyway. "He wanted to make a point," Adrian said, his voice tight with fury. "Show that nowhere is safe, that no amount of protection matters, that Victor keeps his promises." "Did it work?" Lena heard the tremor in her own voice. "Is anywhere safe now?" "Yes." Adrian pulled her against his side, his arm around her shoulders. "Because now we know how desperate Victor is. Desperate men make mistakes, and he just made a big one." They drove in tense silence back to Coral Gables, taking a circuitous route to ensure they weren't followed. Catalina called twice with updates. Roman was in custody, refusing to talk, but police had found his phone with recent communications that might lead them to Victor. The black sedan had fled the scene but was caught on traffic cameras heading south toward Homestead. When they finally arrived at the house, Angelina was waiting in the foyer, her expression thunderous. "Inside! Now! All of you!" They followed her into Adrian's office, where she rounded on her son with barely controlled fury. "You used your wife as bait to draw out a killer, without consulting me, without proper backup, and it nearly got her killed in front of Miami's entire power structure." Her voice was deadly quiet. "Explain." "We had it under control," Adrian said, but even he sounded less certain than usual. "Under control? A man with a gun got within 20 feet of her in a crowded ballroom." Angelina's gaze shifted to Lena. "Are you injured?" "No, I'm fine. You are not fine. You're traumatized and terrified, which you have every right to be." Angelina moved closer, and to Lena's shock took both her hands. "I understand what my son was trying to do. I even understand why. But this ends now. No more public appearances, no more bait. We find Victor the old-fashioned way, through fear and money and the knowledge that every criminal in South Florida will pay a price if they help him." "Mother," Adrian began. "No?" Angelina's voice was steel. "You brought this woman into our family to protect her. So, protect her. Properly. Not by parading her in front of a man who's already proven he's willing to die just to reach her." The room fell silent. Lena saw the war playing out on Adrian's face, the need to defer to his mother's authority battling against his own instincts and pride. Finally, he nodded. "You're right. The plan was too risky." "It was reckless," Angelina corrected. "And beneath you." She turned back to Lena, her expression softening fractionally. "You're staying here, with security, until Victor is either dead or in a hole so deep he'll never see daylight again. Understood?" "Understood," Lena whispered. Angelina left, her departure somehow more intimidating than her presence. Adrian sank into his desk chair, running his hands through his hair in a rare gesture of frustration. "She's right," he said finally. "I got too aggressive, nearly got you killed." "You were trying to end this." "I was trying to prove something." Adrian looked up at her. "That I could keep you safe, that marrying you was the right move, that I wasn't just hiding you, but actively solving the problem. Instead, I almost handed you to Victor on a silver platter. Dante cleared his throat. Roman's in federal custody now. He'll eventually talk, they always do. Between that and the information Catalina's been gathering, we're close. We don't need dramatic plays, just patience. How much patience? Lena asked. How long do I stay locked in this house waiting for Victor to make his next move? As long as it takes, Adrian said firmly. My mother's right. No more risks. Not with your life. But the next 3 days passed in a strange kind of limbo. Lena stayed within the walls of Adrian's estate, watched constantly by security, her world reduced to beautiful rooms and manicured gardens that felt increasingly like a gilded cage. She tried to read, to watch television, to do anything that would distract her from the waiting, but nothing worked. Every moment felt suspended, poised on the edge of something terrible. Adrian threw himself into work with an intensity that seemed almost desperate. He spent hours in his office with Catalina and various associates, coordinating the search for Victor, putting pressure on every contact and connection they had. Lena would see him at meals, brief moments where he'd update her on their progress, but mostly he kept his distance, as if afraid that getting too close would compromise his judgment again. On the third evening, Isabella came to visit. She found Lena on this terrace, staring out at the garden without really seeing it. You look like a woman in prison, Isabella observed, settling into the chair beside her. I feel like one. I heard what happened at the Biltmore. Everyone heard. It's all anyone's talking about. How Adrian Fiora's mysterious new wife was nearly assassinated in broad daylight. Isabella sipped her wine. Congratulations. You're officially Miami's most interesting woman. I'd rather be boring and alive. Wouldn't we all? Isabella studied her. But you're not boring, are you? You're scared but not broken, trapped but not defeated. That takes strength. Or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing. Isabella paused. Adrian's blaming himself. Dante told me. He thinks he failed you. He didn't. He was trying to help. He was trying to be the hero. There's a difference. Isabella's voice was gentle. My cousin's a good man, but he carries the weight of this family on his shoulders. He thinks everything is his responsibility to fix, including you. I'm not his responsibility. This is a business arrangement. Is it? Isabella's gaze was shrewd. Because from where I'm sitting, it stopped being purely business somewhere around day 3. The way he looks at you, the way he positions himself between you and danger without even thinking about it, that's not transaction. That's protection, real protection, the kind that comes from caring. Lena's throat tightened. She'd been trying not to think about the way Adrian's presence had become a comfort, the way his voice could calm her panic, the way she'd started to trust him without consciously deciding to do so. It was easier to maintain distance, to remember this was temporary, if she didn't examine those feelings too closely. It doesn't matter what it is, she said finally. When Victor's caught or killed, when I'm actually safe, this ends. That was our deal. And if you don't want it to end, then I'm a fool. Isabella smiled. Welcome to the club. We meet on Tuesdays. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Eventually, Isabella left, but her words lingered. Lena tried to push them away, to focus on survival rather than whatever complicated thing was developing between her and Adrian, but it was becoming harder to separate the two. Late that night, unable to sleep, Lena wandered downstairs and found Adrian in his office again, the glow of his computer screen casting shadows across his face. He looked exhausted, tension evident in every line of his body. You should rest, she said from the doorway. He looked up, surprised. So should you. Can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see Roman coming toward me in that ballroom. She moved into the room, settling into the chair across from his desk. Do you ever sleep? Not much, not lately. Adrian closed his laptop. Catalina tracked down 3 more of Victor's associates today. 2 are cooperating. The third disappeared, probably warned Victor and ran. But we're getting closer. The net's tightening. And when you catch him, what happens then? Then he goes back to prison, or he dies resisting arrest. Either way, he stops being a threat. That's simple? That's simple. Adrian's gaze was steady. You'll be free, safe. able to reclaim your life. What life? The words came out more bitter than Lena intended. Rachel Winters is dead. Lena Cross was never real. I don't even know who I am anymore. You're Lena Fiora, Adrian said quietly. My wife, part of this family. That's real. For now. Until our deal expires. Adrian was silent for a long moment. Then he stood, moving around the desk to stand in front of her. What if it didn't have to expire? What if this became something more than a temporary arrangement? Lena's heart stuttered. Adrian, I know what we agreed. I know this started as protection, as strategy, but somewhere along the way, it became something else. He crouched down so they were eye level. At least for me. I don't know how you feel, and I won't pressure you, but I need you to know that when this is over, when Victor's gone and you're safe, I don't want you to leave. I want you to stay. Not because you need protection, because I want you here. The confession hung in the air between them, raw and honest and terrifying. Lena stared at him, searching his face for signs of manipulation or calculation, but found only sincerity. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to be real with someone after so many years of pretending. Then learn. With me. Adrian took her hand. I'm not asking you to decide right now. I'm just asking you to consider the possibility that maybe this marriage could become something more than survival, something worth choosing. Before Lena could respond, before she could process the implications of what he was offering, Dante burst through the door, his expression urgent. We found him. Victor. He's at a warehouse in Homestead. Catalina's people confirmed it 10 minutes ago. He's there now, probably planning to run tonight. Adrian was on his feet instantly, the vulnerable moment evaporating into cold efficiency. How many people with him? At least 3, maybe more. Police are standing by waiting for our signal. Tell them to move. Adrian was already reaching for his jacket. I want him in custody within the hour. Adrian, Lena stood, her voice sharp. You're not going there. Let the police handle it. I need to see this through. You need to stay alive. The fear in her voice surprised them both. Victor's dangerous. If something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong. Adrian moved to her, cupping her face in his hands. I'm not taking unnecessary risks. I just need to be there when they bring him in. I need to look him in the eye and know that he can never hurt you again. I don't want you to go. I know. He kissed her forehead, a gesture of tenderness that felt achingly natural. But I have to. Trust me. I'll be back in a few hours, and this will finally be over. He left with Dante before Lena could find more arguments. She stood alone in the office, her hands shaking, a terrible premonition settling in her chest. Something was wrong. She could feel it. Tassib. The hours crawled by. Lena paced the house, unable to sit still, unable to do anything but wait and worry. Elena tried to distract her with tea and conversation, but nothing helped. At midnight, Catalina called with an update. Police had surrounded the warehouse, were preparing to breach. Victor was still inside. At 12:30, radio silence. At 1 a.m, Lena's phone rang. Catalina's voice was tight, controlled, but Lena could hear the strain beneath it. There was a problem. Victor had the building rigged. When police breached, he triggered an explosion. The building's on fire. Emergency services are on scene, but where's Adrian? Lena's voice was barely a whisper. He was outside the perimeter. He's fine. But Victor... Catalina paused. Victor's still in there. The building's coming down. If he's alive, he won't be for long. Lena sank into the nearest chair, her legs unable to support her. After 8 years, after all the running and hiding and fear, it was ending like this. Not with a trial or an arrest, but with fire and destruction. Are they sure he was inside when it went up? Security footage shows him entering but never leaving. The fire's too intense to get close enough to confirm, but... Catalina's voice caught. No one could survive that, Lena. It's over. It's over. The word should have brought relief. Instead, Lena felt numb, hollowed out, unable to process what she was hearing. She sat in the darkness, waiting for Adrian to come home, waiting for confirmation that the monster who'd haunted her for so long was finally gone, and wondering why victory felt so much like loss. Adrian arrived home at 3 a.m, his clothes smelling of smoke, his face streaked with ash. Lena met him at the door, her relief at seeing him alive warring with the hollowness that had settled in her chest during the endless hours of waiting. "Is he dead?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Adrian nodded, pulling her into his arms with a fierceness that spoke of his own need for reassurance. The building collapsed completely. Fire department found remains, but they'll need dental records to confirm identity. Everything points to Victor being inside when it went up. "Everything points to," Lena repeated, "but you're not certain." "As certain as we can be," Adrian pulled back to look at her. "The explosion was intentional. He had the place rigged to destroy evidence if he was cornered. 3 of his associates died in the blast. Security footage shows Victor entering hours before and never leaving. The only exit was through the main entrance, and we had eyes on it the entire time. So he chose to die rather than be captured again. Or he made a mistake and the explosion went off before he could escape." Adrian's voice was rough with exhaustion. "Either way, he's gone. The threat's over." Lena wanted to feel relief, wanted to feel anything other than the strange numbness that had taken hold. After 8 years of fear, of running, of looking over her shoulder, the man who'd stolen her life was dead. She should be celebrating. Instead, she felt unmoored, as if the anchor of that fear had been the only thing keeping her grounded. "The other witnesses," she said quietly. "Brennan and Wells. Are they safe now?" "Federal marshals are notifying them as we speak. They're free. You're all free." Adrian led her to the living room, sinking onto the sofa with the heaviness of someone carrying too much weight. "It's over, Lena. You can have your life back." The words hung between them, loaded with implications neither seemed ready to address. Adrian had said earlier that he wanted her to stay, that this marriage could become something real. But that was before Victor was dead, before the threat that had brought them together had been eliminated. Now, with nothing forcing them to remain connected, the question became, what did they actually want? Lena sat beside him, close but not touching. "What happens now?" "Now?" Adrian leaned his head back, staring at the ceiling. "Now we wait for official confirmation that the remains are Victor's. Probably take a few days, then the investigation closes, the case is resolved, and you're officially no longer in danger. And then I'm free to go. That was our deal." Adrian turned to look at her, something raw and vulnerable in his expression. "That was our deal. But earlier tonight, before Dante interrupted, I asked if you'd consider staying anyway. Not because you need protection, because—" "I know what you said." Lena's voice was gentle. "And I don't know how to answer. I don't know who I am without the fear. For 8 years, survival was my only identity. Now that's gone, and I'm supposed to just— What? Become Lena Fiora for real? Figure out what kind of person I actually am?" "You could, here, with me." Adrian took her hand. "I'm not asking you to have all the answers right now. I'm just asking you not to run. Not yet. Give yourself time to figure out who you are when you're not scared. See if maybe that person wants to build something here." The temptation was overwhelming, to stay in this beautiful house with this complicated man who'd risked everything to keep her safe, to let the performance of being his wife become reality, to finally stop running and put down roots somewhere, anywhere, with someone who saw her, really saw her, and wanted her anyway. But the fear was equally strong. Fear that she'd only be trading one kind of cage for another. Fear that without the excuse of protection, she'd have to face the truth of what was developing between them. Fear that she'd fall completely, and then discover that Adrian's feelings were born of responsibility and adrenaline, not genuine connection. "I need time," she said finally, "to process all of this, to understand what I actually want versus what feels safe." "How much time?" "I don't know. Weeks? Months?" Lena squeezed his hand. "I'm not saying no. I'm saying I need to figure out who I am before I can decide what kind of life I want to build." Adrian nodded slowly, disappointment flickering across his features, but acceptance settling in behind it. "All right. Take the time you need. But take it here. Don't leave until you've had a chance to really think about what you want, without fear clouding everything." "Adrian, please." His grip tightened on her hand. "I'm not trying to trap you. I'm trying to give you space to heal, to remember what it feels like to wake up without terror, to see if maybe, once that's gone, there's something else worth staying for." Lena looked at their joined hands, at the ring she'd worn for less than a week that already felt like part of her. "Okay, I'll stay. For now." until we know for sure Victor's dead and I've had time to think clearly. Thank you. They sat together in the pre-dawn darkness, exhausted and emotionally wrung out, neither ready to let go of the fragile connection they'd built in the midst of chaos. Eventually, Adrian stood, pulling Lena to her feet. Come on, we both need sleep, real sleep, not the kind where you wake up every hour checking exits. He walked her to her room, and at the door he hesitated. Then he leaned in and kissed her forehead, lingering for just a moment before pulling away. Good night, Lena. Good night. She watched him disappear down the hallway before entering her room and closing the door. For the first time in 8 years, she fell asleep without fear. The confirmation came 3 days later. Dental records matched. The remains found in the warehouse fire were definitively Viktor Kozlov. The other 2 witnesses were officially released from protection. The case was closed. Lena received the news in Adrian's office, Catalina delivering the report with professional efficiency. When she finished, silence filled the room, heavy with the weight of endings and uncertain beginnings. It's really over, Lena said, more to herself than to them. It's really over, Catalina confirmed. You're free. Legally, officially, completely free. Free. The word should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like stepping off a cliff into nothing, no longer tethered by fear or necessity or any clear purpose. Adrian dismissed Catalina with a nod of thanks, then moved to pour 2 glasses of whiskey. He handed one to Lena, raising his own in a quiet toast. To freedom, to survival, to whatever comes next. They drank, and Lena felt the burn of the alcohol cut through the numbness. I should call the other witnesses, Brennan and Wells. Make sure they're okay. Already done. Catalina reached out to them this morning. They're both relieved, both safe, both ready to reclaim their lives. Adrian set his glass down. What about you? Are you ready? I don't know what I'm ready for. Lena moved to the window, staring out at the garden that had become so familiar. For 8 years I had one goal, stay alive. Now I've done that and I have no idea what comes next. You could start by remembering who you were before. Rachel Winters. What did she want? What were her dreams? Lena tried to recall. Rachel had been a paralegal with vague aspirations of law school someday. She'd liked hiking, reading, trying new restaurants with friends she'd left behind when she disappeared into witness protection. She'd been ordinary in the best way, safe, stable, unremarkable. Rachel wanted a normal life, she said quietly. A career, maybe a family someday. Nothing extraordinary, just real. And Lena? What does she want? That was the harder question. Lena Cross had been a ghost, existing in the margins, defined entirely by what she was running from rather than what she was running toward. But Lena Fiora, the woman she'd become in Adrian's world, that identity was still being written. I think, she said slowly, Lena wants to stop being afraid, wants to build something that matters, wants to figure out how to trust people again. She turned to face Adrian. And she wants to know if what we have is real or just trauma bonding dressed up as connection. Adrian crossed the room to stand before her. There's only one way to find out. Give it time. Give us time. Not as protector and protected, but as 2 people who met under extraordinary circumstances and are trying to figure out if there's something worth building when the extraordinary becomes ordinary. And if there isn't? If we discover that without the danger, there's nothing holding us together? Then we part as friends, and you walk away with your freedom and my genuine wish for your happiness. Adrian's voice was steady, honest. But if there is something, if we find that what we started to build in the chaos actually grows stronger in the calm, then we have something rare, something worth keeping. Before Lena could respond, her phone rang. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, old habits of caution rising automatically. But Victor was dead. There were no more threats. She could answer her phone without fear for the first time in nearly a decade. Hello? Lena Cross? The voice was female, professional. This is Agent Sarah Chen with the FBI. I'm calling to inform you that the investigation into Viktor Kozlov has been officially closed. You're no longer required to maintain your protected identity or adhere to any witness security protocols. Sarah Chen. The name sent a jolt through Lena's system. Sarah Chen had been one of the other witnesses, killed in the first wave of Victor's hunt. I'm sorry, Lena said carefully. Did you say your name was Sarah Chen? Yes, Sarah Chen, FBI. A pause. Is there a problem? Adrian was watching her intently, reading the tension in her posture. Lena put the call on speaker. Sarah Chen was one of the witnesses Victor killed. I saw her name on the list. Silence on the other end. Then, carefully, I think there's been some confusion. I'm calling to inform you that... What's your badge number? Adrian cut in, his voice sharp. Another pause. I'm sorry, who is this? Answer the question. What's your badge number? The line went dead. Lena stared at the phone, her blood running cold. That wasn't the FBI. No. Adrian was already moving, pulling up his laptop, typing rapidly. That was someone testing to see if you're still at this number, still accessible. His expression darkened as he scanned something on the screen. The fire. The confirmation. We've been assuming Victor was in that building, but what if he wasn't? Lena finished, horror dawning. What if he escaped before the explosion? Used his associates' deaths as a cover? The remains, Adrian said urgently. They matched his dental records. How? Dental records can be faked. Catalina's voice came from the doorway. She'd returned without either of them noticing, her face pale. If he had access to someone with similar build, similar age, and enough time to prepare, he could have planted a body, Dante finished, appearing behind Catalina. Made it look like he died in the fire while he escaped. The chaos, the heat damage, the collapse, all of it would make definitive identification difficult. Lena's legs gave out. She sank into the nearest chair as the reality crashed over her. Victor wasn't dead. He was still out there, still hunting. And he'd just confirmed she was still accessible, still vulnerable, still within reach. The perimeter, Adrian snapped at Dante. Lock it down. Now, full security protocol. No one in or out without my authorization. Dante disappeared. Catalina was already on her phone calling in additional security. And Adrian crouched in front of Lena, his hands gripping her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. Listen to me. We got complacent. We believed what we wanted to believe instead of confirming it properly, but we're not making that mistake again. His voice was steel wrapped in determination. Victor just showed his hand. He revealed he's still alive, which means he's going to move soon. And this time, we'll be ready. How? Lena's voice broke. How are we supposed to fight someone who can fake his own death, who has resources and connections and absolutely nothing to lose? We stop defending and start attacking. Adrian stood, pulling her to her feet. No more reacting, no more waiting for him to come to us. We use the fact that he thinks we believe he's dead. We turn his own trap against him. How? Adrian's expression turned cold, calculating. We let him think he's won. We put out word that you're leaving Miami, that our marriage was just for protection, and now that the threat's supposedly over, you're moving on. We make you look vulnerable again, accessible. You want to use me as bait, again. I want to use both of us as bait. Adrian's grip on her arms tightened. Victor came after you because you were isolated, but he's never faced someone coming after him with equal resources and equal determination. We draw him out one final time, but this time, we don't just capture him, we end this permanently. Catalina returned, her expression grim. I've got 6 more security personnel en route. They'll be here within the hour. In the meantime, I'm pulling up every piece of surveillance we have from the night of the fire, cross-referencing with traffic cameras, looking for any sign of Victor leaving before the explosion. And I'm reaching out to our contacts on the street, Dante added from the hallway. Someone's hiding him. Someone's helping him. Money talks, and we're offering enough to make anyone reconsider their loyalties. The house transformed into a command center. Adrian's office filled with people, security personnel, tech specialists, individuals whose exact roles Lena didn't fully understand, but whose competence was evident in every efficient movement. Maps appeared on screens showing locations across Miami. Photographs covered the desk, Victor, his known associates, the warehouse that had supposedly been his tomb. Through it all, Lena sat in the corner, watching the organized chaos swirl around her. This was Adrian's world, the world she'd married into, the world that had both protected and endangered her. A world where violence and strategy were just business tools, where loyalty was currency and information was power. And somewhere out there, Viktor Kozlov was planning his final move. The trap came together over the next 48 hours. Adrian leaked information through carefully selected channels. Lena was leaving Miami. Their marriage had been a protective arrangement that was ending now that the threat was supposedly gone. She'd be traveling alone to Colorado to reclaim her old life. They chose a public location for her supposed departure. Miami International Airport, busy enough to provide cover but contained enough to control access. The plan was simple: make Lena visible, make her vulnerable, and wait for Viktor to take the bait. He'll have to verify it himself, Adrian explained as they went over the details for the third time. He won't trust secondhand information. He'll want to see you with his own eyes before he makes his move. And when he does, we'll have 30 security personnel positioned throughout the terminal, all of them armed, all of them with your photo and Viktor's. The moment he appears, the net closes. What if he doesn't come himself? What if he sends someone like he did at the Biltmore? Then we catch whoever he sends and use them to find him. Adrian's voice was grim. But I don't think he will. He's too close to finishing what he started, too invested. He'll want to do this himself. The night before the operation, Lena couldn't sleep. She wandered the house, memorizing details, the way moonlight fell through the tall windows, the smell of jasmine from the garden, the solid weight of doors that locked and protected. Tomorrow she'd walk into an airport knowing a killer was watching. Tomorrow, everything would finally end one way or another. She found Adrian on the terrace, staring out at the dark garden. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. He shook his head. "Too many variables. Too many things that could go wrong." "Then don't do this. Call it off. Find another way." "There is no other way." Adrian turned to face her. "Viktor won't stop. He's proven that. As long as he's alive, you'll never be truly free. This is the only path that ends with your safety. Or my death. Not going to happen." The fierceness in his voice was absolute. "I've lost enough in my life. I'm not losing you too." Lena moved closer, drawn by the raw emotion in his words. "Adrian, if something happens tomorrow, nothing will happen. But if it does, I need you to know." She paused, searching for words to express the complicated tangle of feelings that had developed between them. "What we have, whatever this is, it's real. At least for me. I don't know if it's love or trauma or just two broken people finding something to hold on to. But it matters. You matter." Adrian pulled her into his arms, holding her with a desperation that belied his confident words. "When this is over, when Viktor's actually dead and you're actually safe, I want the chance to find out what we could be. Not protector and protected, not strategic allies, just us. Is that something you'd want?" Lena pulled back enough to look at him. In his eyes, she saw everything she felt reflected back: fear and hope and the tentative beginning of something that could become everything. "Yes," she whispered. "That's something I'd want." He kissed her then, and it wasn't the careful, performative kiss from their wedding or the brief gesture of comfort he'd given before. This was real, urgent, filled with all the words they hadn't said and all the possibilities they hadn't dared to imagine. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "Tomorrow, we end this. Together. And then we start figuring out what comes next." "Together," Lena agreed. Miami International Airport was chaos at 11 in the morning, travelers rushing between gates, families saying tearful goodbyes, business people typing urgently on laptops while waiting for delayed flights. Lena walked through it all, a suitcase rolling behind her, looking every inch like a woman leaving a life behind. Adrian wasn't visible, but she knew he was there. Knew Dante was posing as a TSA agent near security. Knew Catalina was monitoring feeds from a van outside. Knew 30 other people were scattered throughout the terminal, watching, waiting, ready to move the moment Viktor appeared. She checked in at the counter, accepted her boarding pass, and moved toward security. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to stop making herself such an obvious target, but she kept walking, kept playing her part, trusting that Adrian's plan would work. She was halfway through the security line when she felt it, that prickling awareness of being watched. She'd felt it enough times over the past 8 years to recognize it instantly. Somewhere in this crowd, Viktor was watching her. Lena forced herself not to react, not to scan the crowd or show any sign of awareness. She removed her shoes, placed her bag on the conveyor belt, walked through the metal detector. Normal, casual, unaware. She collected her things on the other side and moved toward her gate, her pulse hammering. Where was he? When would he make his move? The answer came as she entered a less crowded corridor leading to the B gates. A man stepped out from behind a support column, blocking her path. Not Victor, younger, harder, with dead eyes and a gun concealed poorly under his jacket. Ms. Cross? Mr. Kozlov would like a word. Before Lena could respond, before she could signal for help, the man's hand shot out to grab her arm. But he never made contact. Dante appeared from behind, moving with lethal efficiency, disarming the man and driving him to the floor in seconds. Other security personnel converged, weapons drawn, shouting at surrounding travelers to get down. Chaos erupted. People screamed and scattered. Alarms blared. And through it all, Lena saw him, Victor Kozlov, standing 50 feet away near a coffee shop, his face twisted with rage as he realized his man had failed. Their eyes met across the panicked crowd. For a moment, time seemed to stop. 8 years of fear and running, 8 years of nightmares and constant vigilance, all crystallized in that single look. Then Victor turned and ran. Adrian appeared at Lena's side, pulling her behind a support column. Stay here. Don't move. Adrian, but he was already gone, chasing after Victor with Dante close behind. Lena watched them disappear into the crowd, security personnel flooding after them, and felt the helplessness of being left behind while others fought her battle. She didn't stay put, couldn't. This was her life, her fight, her chance to finally face the man who'd stolen 8 years from her. She ran in the direction they'd gone, dodging confused travelers and security personnel trying to establish order. She found them in a baggage claim area that had been evacuated. Victor had been cornered against a wall, Adrian and Dante blocking his escape, weapons drawn. Other security personnel formed a perimeter, ensuring no one could get in or out. It's over, Victor, Adrian said, his voice deadly calm. You're surrounded. The only question is whether you come quietly or die here. Victor laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You think this is over? You think capturing me changes anything? His eyes found Lena standing at the edge of the perimeter. I'll get out again. I'll find you again. I'll finish what I started even if it takes another decade. No, Lena said, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. You won't. She moved forward, ignoring Adrian's warning look, until she stood directly in front of the man who'd haunted her for so long. Up close, he looked smaller than she remembered. Older. Diminished by years in prison and desperation. You've spent 8 years hunting me, she continued. 8 years focused on revenge, on punishing witnesses who told the truth about what you did. And where did it get you? 4 people dead, your nephew in federal custody, your network destroyed, and yourself cornered in an airport with no way out. I'm not finished, me. Yes, you are. Lena's voice hardened. You're going back to prison, Victor. Maximum security this time, no transfer convoys, no opportunities for escape. You'll spend the rest of your life in a cell, alone, knowing that the woman you tried so hard to kill is out here living freely, and there's nothing you can do about it anymore. Victor lunged forward, but Dante was faster, driving him to the ground and securing his hands behind his back with practiced efficiency. Federal agents rushed in, real ones this time, badges verified, and took custody of the prisoner. As they hauled Victor to his feet, he looked at Lena one last time. This isn't over, he snarled. Yes, Lena said quietly. It is. They dragged him away and Lena watched until he disappeared from sight. Then her legs gave out, and Adrian was there, catching her, holding her upright, while the adrenaline drained away and left her shaking. It's over, Adrian murmured against her hair. It's really over this time. And finally, Lena believed it. Sin. The aftermath was a blur of statements to federal agents, paperwork, and news crews that had to be avoided. Adrian's lawyers handled most of it, ensuring Lena's identity remained protected even as the story of Victor Kozlov's capture made headlines. The other 2 witnesses were notified immediately, their relief palpable even through phone calls. 3 days later, Lena stood in Adrian's office while Catalina presented the final report. Victor was in federal custody, facing enough charges to ensure he'd never see freedom again. His remaining network had dissolved, associates scrambling to distance themselves from a failed operation. The threat was genuinely, completely eliminated. "So that's it," Lena said when Catalina finished. "I'm actually free." "You're actually free," Catalina confirmed. She smiled, a rare expression on her normally serious face. "Congratulations. You survived something that would have broken most people." After Catalina left, Lena found herself alone with Adrian for the first time since the airport. They stood in awkward silence, suddenly unsure how to navigate a world where protection wasn't necessary, where their connection existed independent of danger. "So," Adrian said finally, "what happens now?" Lena took a deep breath. Over the past 3 days, while giving statements and processing everything that had happened, she'd done a lot of thinking about who she was, who she wanted to be, and what kind of life she wanted to build. "Now," she said slowly, "I figure out how to be a person again, how to make choices based on what I want instead of what keeps me safe, how to trust that I can build something real without it being destroyed." "And does that something real include staying here with me?" "I don't know yet." Lena saw the hurt flash across his face and quickly continued. "Not because I don't want to, but because I need to make sure I'm choosing you for the right reasons. Not because you saved me or because I'm afraid to be alone, because I genuinely want to build a life with you." Adrian nodded slowly. "How long do you need?" "A few months, maybe. Time to remember who Rachel Winters was and figure out who Lena Fiora could be." She moved closer to him. "I'm not running away. I'm just asking for space to find myself before I commit to anything permanent." "Where will you go?" "Colorado, actually. Back to my hometown. There are people there who knew Rachel, who can help me reconnect with that part of myself." She took his hand. "But I'm not disappearing. We'll talk, video calls, whatever we need to stay connected while I figure this out. And if you decide that what we have isn't enough, that you want a completely fresh start somewhere else, then I'll tell you honestly, and we'll end things as friends." Lena squeezed his hand. "But Adrian, I don't think that's going to happen. I think once I've had time to heal, to remember what it feels like to live without fear, I'm going to realize that what we started building in the chaos is exactly what I want to keep building in the calm." Hope flickered in Adrian's expression. "You really think so?" "I really do." She rose on her toes and kissed him, gentle and full of promise. "Give me 3 months. 3 months to find myself. And then I'm coming back, and we're going to figure out how to make this work for real." 3 months, Adrian agreed. "And then you come home." Home. The word settled over Lena like a blanket, warm and right. This house, this man, this complicated family she'd married into, somewhere along the way, it had all become home. 3 months later, Lena stood at the arrivals gate at Miami International Airport, her heart racing for entirely different reasons than the last time she'd been here. She'd spent the past months in Colorado, reconnecting with old friends, seeing a therapist who specialized in trauma recovery, slowly peeling back the layers of protection she'd built around herself. She'd remembered what it felt like to laugh without checking exits, to sleep without nightmares, to wake up and make choices based on what she wanted rather than what kept her safe. And every day she'd talk to Adrian. Video calls where they shared their days, their thoughts, the small moments that built intimacy as surely as grand gestures. She'd watched him navigate family drama and business challenges, seen the way he handled power with careful consideration, learned about the man beneath the protector. And with each conversation, she'd become more certain that what she felt wasn't dependence or gratitude. It was genuine love for a complicated, honorable man who'd given her not just protection, but space to become herself again. She walked through the terminal, past the spot where Victor had been captured, and out into the Miami sunshine. Adrian was waiting at the curb, leaning against his car, and when he saw her, his face lit up with a smile that made her heart skip. "Welcome home," he said as she approached. "Home," Lena repeated, and kissed him like she'd been wanting to for 3 months. "That sounds perfect." They drove to Coral Gables through familiar streets, talking easily about her trip, about changes at the house, about family gossip she'd missed. When they pulled into the driveway, Angelina was waiting on the front steps, her expression unreadable. "So," the older woman said as Lena climbed out of the car, "you came back." "I did." Why? Lena met her gaze squarely. Because this is where I belong. Because your son gave me the space to figure out who I am, and the person I am wants to be here. With him. With all of you. Angelina studied her for a long moment. Then she smiled, genuinely smiled, and pulled Lena into an embrace. Good, because we've gotten used to having you around, and Isabella's been insufferable, insisting I couldn't scare you away permanently. That evening, they gathered for dinner. Adrian, Lena, Angelina, Isabella, and her husband, Marco and his wife, Uncle Vincent, and a handful of others who'd become familiar over the past months. It felt like family. Complicated, loud, occasionally argumentative family, but family nonetheless. After dinner, Adrian led Lena out to the terrace where they'd had so many significant conversations. The garden was lit with soft lights, the night air warm and fragrant. I have something for you, he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Lena's breath caught. Adrian, I know we're already married. I know we did this backward, starting with the wedding and working toward the relationship, but I wanted to do this part right. He opened the box to reveal a ring, not the simple band she'd worn as part of their arrangement, but a beautiful diamond that caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. Lena Fiora, Adrian said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. Will you marry me? For real this time. Not because you need protection or because I owe a debt, but because we choose each other, because we want to build a life together. Tears spilled down Lena's cheeks. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. For real this time. He slid the ring onto her finger, and she stared at it through her tears, marveling at how something that had started as survival had transformed into something beautiful. I love you, she said, the words feeling both terrifying and right. I don't know when it happened exactly. Maybe in your office that first night, maybe at the gallery, maybe gradually over 1,000 small moments. But I love you. I love you too. Adrian pulled her close. From the moment you agreed to this insane plan, you've been the bravest person I know. And every day since, you've proven that bravery isn't about not being afraid. It's about facing fear and choosing to live anyway. They stood together under the stars, two people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances and chosen to build something good from the chaos. Lena thought about Rachel Winters, the woman she'd been before, and Lena Cross, the ghost she'd become. Both of them were part of her story, part of who she was. But Lena Fiora, wife, family member, woman who'd survived and chosen to thrive, that was who she was becoming. And for the first time in 8 years, she was excited to find out what came next. 6 months later, Lena stood in front of a small gathering in the same room where she'd first married Adrian. But this time, it was different. This time, her hands didn't shake as she spoke her vows. This time, when Adrian kissed her, it wasn't for show or protection. It was real as the love that had grown between them, as real as the life they were building together. She'd started working with a nonprofit that helped victims of violent crime, using her experience to support others who were trying to rebuild their lives. Adrian had begun the slow process of transitioning his business interests toward more legitimate operations, honoring the promise he'd made to Marcus years ago to become something better. They still had obstacles. His family's past didn't disappear overnight, and her trauma didn't heal in a straight line. There were hard days and difficult conversations and moments when the weight of their respective histories felt too heavy to carry. But they carried them together. And somehow, that made all the difference. As they walked out of the house into the garden where their reception was being held, a real reception this time, full of genuine celebration, Lena realized she'd finally found what she'd been searching for without knowing it. Not just safety, not just survival, but a life worth living. A partner worth trusting, a future worth building. She was no longer running from her past or hiding from her present. She was living, fully, completely, courageously living. And it was beautiful.